My name is Jessica Miller, and today we're going to be going over balancing process and product in first-year composition courses for my micro-teaching project. All right, so our learning goals with this project is going to be to define the difference between process and product-based teaching, compare and contrast the two methods, and identify how to balance those two goals in order to help students create a really strong piece of academic writing. All right, so first off, what is the writing process? For the most part, the writing process will be between 5 to 7 steps, and you can break it up different ways. But I've got the main 5 on the screen here, and that is pre-writing. That's anything that happens before you write anything down in your first draft. So that'll be brainstorming, doing word webs, kind of getting all of your ideas out there, and then you will write your first draft. It's the second step in the process. And that's where you put all of your ideas on paper. It doesn't have to be refined or anything like that. You just want to get them all down. And revising is where you really shape your paper, make all of your thoughts coherent, and decide what you want and what you don't in the paper. When you're teaching students, revising is probably going to be the hardest part to teach because it's very technical. It's going to force them to think about what they've already written and exactly what they want to say. And then you move on to editing, which is the 4th step in the writing process, and that's really focusing in on mechanics. So it'll be grammar, spelling, and formatting, MLA, APA, Turabian, whatever you're using for their discipline. And lastly is publishing, and that is where you submit your final paper to the professor. That's the end of the conversation for students. All right, now we're looking at the product. Essentially, the product is going to be the final paper, and so a lot of teachers will have vague rubrics. I would say for first year composition, it's very important to make your expectations clear. So word count, page count, formatting, why you're telling students those specific instructions, whether you're teaching them APA formatting and you want them to focus in on exactly how to communicate in APA, because it is different from MLA because the goals for the disciplines that they're associated with are very different. This is where you kind of explain to students exactly what your expectations are and why they're there. All right, moving on. Have you guys ever, in your first year writing courses, had teachers kind of give you an assignment that you have to do and then walk you through the writing process, or really emphasize step by step what the process is?
Yes. I'll say I had some teachers that did emphasize a process and then others that did not. It was very frustrating when somebody says, here's a paper, write it, and they have expectations for what they want, but they don't communicate it, and so you end up flopping around, especially in that first year, trying to figure out what are the expectations, whether that's MLA format and that writing style, APA, or Turabian. It's a very different mindset going into each type, and so clear expectations is important.
Definitely. So that's why when we have our similarities on the board, it is important for students to understand both the process and the product. So the process is really going to help them break down just how to write a paper, because most students are fresh out of high school. There are different expectations at the lower levels, like say high school, even junior to senior year. They're not writing at the collegiate level yet, and that's our job to kind of get them into that next phase of writing. Both can be graded. And so if you create assignments, it does tend to take a little bit longer if you are teaching the process and you're giving an assignment for every step, say a pre-writing assignment, an editing assignment, revising, drafting, all of that can be a little bit grade heavy on the professor. So even if you just say submit it at the end of class so I know that you're doing the steps, I can really encourage students to take the time to work on learning the process so it'll be beneficial to them long term. And with the final paper, you're going to grade it anyway. And the differences between the two, like I said, process does take longer to emphasize. And focusing on product can really encourage students in a negative way to focus too much on word count, too much on making their page count. So you really want them to be thoughtful in their writing. So emphasizing the process kind of forces that forward for them. Process is more vague, product has specific instructions, and that's where the rubric comes in. All right, and so balancing both is really just the act of emphasizing how the steps in the process connect to the final product. So You're pre-writing, how does that connect to the final draft? You're getting your ideas out there so that when it's time to write the final draft, you're not just pulling sources together in a haphazard way. Drafting, same thing. You want to get your ideas on paper, and that's what's going to take you to the final draft. You're going to revise and edit it to the point where you can publish or submit a quality piece of work. And as you're teaching, it's really important to help your students understand that this pre-writing or any step in the process that isn't publishing is going to get them to the goal of actually getting a good grade, and beyond that, becoming better writers. And so one helpful metaphor that I actually had in my English 101 classes was that writing is a conversation. So when you're pre-writing, you're thinking about what it is you want to say. You have a topic that you want to respond to, and you're really exploring what you have to say in response to that. As far as drafting, you're getting those ideas on paper, trying to decide exactly how you want to respond to, in this case, your audience, which is me, the professor. Editing, revising, same thing. You're really refining your words and your ideas so that what you have to say is worth saying. And publishing is really just saying what you have to say. That's submitting the paper. So that is, for me, how you balance process and product in your first year composition courses. Do you have any questions for me or any ideas that you wanted to contribute to the conversation?
No, thank you. I really appreciate that. That does definitely help clarify the differences between it. So thank you.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you for coming to my presentation today. My sources that I've linked and some helpful hints will be at the bottom of the video.
Perfect. Thank you so much.